So that's real ace. Now, we've touched Bernard Baruch, Corrigan. Now that's the portion I have today on the Federal Reserve Bank. The Federal Reserve Bank is run by the Pope for the benefit of the Pope to restore his New World Order, which is nothing more than a reversion back to the Pope's Dark Ages, in the words of Aleister Crowley, that he was for a feudal government run by initiated nobles. And that's exactly what we have now. The New World Order is the Pope's Dark Ages restored, overseen and run by high-level Freemasons, Knights of Malta, and any other order, the Constantinian Order, the Knights of St. Grady, all by initiated nobles. And those of us that were not in the club were nothing. As much as I can't stand the filthy mouth of George Carlin and all the profanity that he used, that summation that he gave that one night was absolutely right on target. He could have only improved it if he would have said, and they are the Pope's Roman hierarchy overseen by the Jesuit order. But that would have got him killed within 24 hours. So the Federal Reserve Bank is run by Rome. Now, the Federal Reserve Bank is, and going back to our banking list here, the Federal Reserve Bank is going to give $25 billion with this bailout to the Bank of America. Well, the one who runs the Bank of America, or is the head, is another white Gentile by the name of Kenneth Lewis. Kenneth Lewis. The Bank of America was started by the Jesuits, and as I touched on yesterday, 51% of the stock back in 1983 was owned by the Jesuit order. And the buyout of Countrywide Financial was orchestrated through two Roman Catholics, because the head of Countrywide at the time was Angelo Mazzilio. And Angelo Mazzilio is a Roman Catholic, Italian-American. That's what they call themselves, Italian-Americans. They can't be called Americans now, you know. You got to be, if you're Roman Catholic, you got to hyphenate your race. I can't call myself a Swedish American or an English American or a Welsh American. You have to call yourself an Irish American, right? That means you're Catholic. I watched the Philadelphia parade on Columbus Day, and you got all those Italian Catholics, Italian Americans waving their Italian flag. If you love Italy so much, go back to Italy. If you love Puerto Rico so much, go back to Puerto Rico. If you love Mexico so much, go back to Mexico. Don't wave that stinking flag in my face. Has nothing to do with me. Has nothing to do with America. And it's an abomination. And it ought to be illegal. Continuing on now. We have collusion between that Jesuit-trained Chris Dodd and as a friend of Angelo, when he got a sweetheart deal, and McCain's even been talking about that. But you see, McCain and Chris Dodd are good brother Jesuit coadjutors. So Angelo Mazzilio and Kenneth D. Lewis worked together, I believe in collusion, to bring about that sweetheart deal when they bought up Countrywide mortgages. So now the Jesuits own and control all those mortgages through their Bank of America. Don't you like it now? Isn't that just wonderful that they control all this real estate? Well, on top of that, they also purchased Merrill Lynch. Merrill Lynch was known as the Catholic house on Wall Street up until 1970. Isn't it interesting that the Bank of America would bail out Merrill Lynch, but they wouldn't bail out Lehman Brothers? Because you see, Lehman Brothers was run by a Jew, even though he was serving the Pope, but there were many Jewish holdings within Lehman Brothers. And so there are many financially broken Jews now as a result of the crash of Lehman Brothers. And that's just what the Jesuits wanted. Lehman Brothers was the Jewish house. Merrill Lynch was the Catholic house. They saved the Catholic house and allowed the Jewish house to go down. What is this? It's the Council of Trent on Wall Street. Continuing. They also, John A. Thain now is, they purchased not only Merrill Lynch, they purchased Nations Bank in 1998, Fleet Boston in 2004, MBNA in 2005, LaSalle Bank in 2007. The Jesuits, through their Bank of America, have been buying up everything. And the two big houses allowed to fail, Lehman Brothers, run by a Jew, Richard Fuld. And the other one, a bank, Washington Mutual, run by another Jew, Allen H. Fishman. And so now the Jesuits, they can begin to blame certain Jews for this whole collapse. Isn't that nice? Do you see how they work, my white brothers? Only a brilliant, devious white mind can work like this. That's why it takes righteous white men to resist these wicked, sinful white men. Will you join me? You trust the Lord? Okay, now, that's Bank of America. That's the fourth big bank. The fifth one is Citigroup. Citigroup was built by a Jew, Sanford I. Wheel. But I believe it was taken over by the Knights in 2002. Today it's headed by a German British citizen. He has a dual citizenship in Germany and England. And it's Sir Winfried Franz Wilken Bischoff. Sir Bischoff. Isn't that nice? He's a foreigner running Citigroup. They're going to get $25 billion of our money. How nice. But the grab we really need to look at is this Charles O. Prince III. Charles O. Prince III. Let's take a look. Charles O. Prince III he succeeded Sandy Wheel as CEO of the firm in 2003 and as the chairman of the board 2006. Who is this Charles Prince? I wonder if he's any relation to Eric Prince of Blackwater. Maybe somebody could find that out for me. It says down here in history, Charles O. Prince III was born in California in 1950. He went to UCLA, University of Southern California, for his master's degree in Juris Doctor. He continued his education, going on to receive a Master's of Law degree from Georgetown University. There he is. Jesuit Georgetown. So here we have another Jesuit coadjutor, intimately involved in having headed Citigroup, now headed by this German foreigner, and they're going to get $25 billion. Another white Gentile. That's our next white Gentile. Wells Fargo. Wells Fargo is headed by a white Gentile named John Stump, and the chairman, his name is Dick Kavanovich, another white Gentile. So we got two white Gentiles, probably Roman Catholic, heading Wells Fargo, because Wells Fargo is out of San Francisco, and the Jesuits have ruled San Francisco since 1850, pardon me, according to Father Charles Chiniquy in his great book, 50 Years in the Church of Rome. And I quoted in my book, Vatican Assassins. Well, here we have two white Gentiles, John Stump and Dick Kavanovich, running Wells Fargo. And what does Wells Fargo do? Well, Wells Fargo purchases Wachovia. And now they're huge. That means every Wachovia bank in Pennsylvania is all run by Wells Fargo. And now Wells Fargo has a sweetheart deal with Bank of America to work together in financial transactions. And by the way, Wells Fargo is getting $25 billion too. Just give all your money to the Pope. If you don't want to resist the Pope, then fall down and serve him and give everything you own to him, because if you don't, they're going to take it anyway. That's right, my white brothers. Next one, J.P. Morgan Chase. This was the most interesting discovery. I asked myself, whatever happened to Chemical Bank? Chemical Bank was the bank that J. Grace used to use for his W.R. Grace and Company. When I researched him 20 years ago, J. Peter Grace was the head of the American branch of the Knights of Malta. He was overseeing the Kennedy assassination for Cardinal Spellman, which includes Lee Iacocca and Cartha DeLoach and Henry Luce and Alexander Haig and a host of others. Interesting that I can find these things, but the Justice Department can't find it. That tells you who controls justice in this country. So what happened to Chemical Bank? By the way, the head of J.P. Morgan Chase today is James Dimone, and he is CEO, another white Gentile,